3, 2, 1. Welcome to the David the Dog Trainer Podcast, episode 98. Today we're joined by Blake Rodriguez of Dream Come Tru K9. Let's
recording in
get
progress.
On.
Yo.
Hey, man.
What's up, brother?
Oh, nothing. I was waiting for Lindsay Rodriguez to come on. That's the name that pops up here.
I'll switch it in a sec. Give me a moment.
It's fine.
No, I'm glad we're finally able to make this work, man.
Yeah, dude, 100%.
I apologize on my behalf for not being able to make it happen sooner.
Oh, it's no sweat. I know you're a busy guy, so I can't imagine the travel back and forth between New York and Florida you've been doing so much.
It's actually not terrible.
Yeah. How far of a drive is that? Like 14, 16 hours?
It's like 18, but with the dogs and stuff, it ends up being like a 24-hour thing.
Yeah.
There's like you're stopping, you're taking your time, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, that's wild. This is Josh. This is my podcast buddy here.
What's up, brother? How are you?
Good, yourself?
Well, yeah, like I said, I'm
not bad.
happy to have you on finally. Excited we were able to make this happen. So obviously I've known you for quite a while now. You're I remember when I first started my first company, Heights, you were one of the first people I reached out to and did, I remember, a virtual consult with. And you've been
That's wild.
You've been a real leader of the dog industry for a while now. So it's cool to see, your evolution throughout things. And I'm really excited to talk about just kind of how things have been going with you with the new stuff going on in Florida, everything, because obviously you've had so much change between, then and now. So, obviously, so what part of Florida are you in right now? Oh, we got the Modelo's out.
Yeah, I got to bust it out, man. It's been a long day. Just put my daughter to sleep. I'm good. I'm in Delray Beach, Florida. So Delray Beach is like about 50 minutes from Miami. So we're north of Miami. I'm right near Boca.
Nice. Very cool. It seems like everybody in the dog training world is moving to the Florida area right now. We've done a bunch of podcasts with people down in the area. So you like it down there, I'm assuming?
I love it, man. You have good weather all the time, so there's really not much to complain about. The thing that gets a little tough sometimes is maybe not so much with a dog that's gun ho and is maybe like your dog, but with like pet dogs being outside and like brutal temperatures and trying to motivate them and get them eager to love you when it's like cold and you're like, hey, we got to get outside. It's not always the best combination,
Yeah, for sure. That's wild to think about. I know my my Malinois, my Shepherd, when I had him, they were so like you could put them out in any temperature and they just like had zero fucks given. It was just like whatever to them. But my pitties, man, they're such princesses about that kind of stuff. If the temperature like goes above 75 or under like 50, it's like they want nothing to do with it.
It's wild. So my Shepherd actually just passed in March. He was 15 and he was a dog that like my understanding of a lot of other dogs were like, oh, like suck it up. This dog doesn't need a coat. This dog doesn't need that. Like my dog is good in the summertime. He's good in the winter. Like, why are people babying their dogs? And now I have this Mastiff like pit bull mix, and he's a tough dog in some regards, in some aspects. But when it comes to like cold weather, he's terrible.
Yeah,
he's terrible. Like if it gets under 50, like here in Florida, I might have to put a coat on him. It's really bad, or you got to keep him moving.
Yeah, 100%. That's hilarious. What brought you down to the Florida area in the first place? Were you just looking for like a change from the city, or?
No, man. You know what it was? I'm trying to think of how. Oh, I remember now. I had a client in Jersey.
Yeah.
And it turns out that client that I worked for and did some really good stuff with their dog had a place here in Delray Beach also. So he was like, hey, listen, I really love what you did. We're going to be down here. We have everything is great, but there are some things that we want to work on. Could we fly you down and just help us figure out how to make it work here? Mm-hmm. Here, like the differences. And like for us, a lot of those differences were not anything major,
sure.
But for them, there were some environmental changes. So I was like, yeah, I'd love to. And I totally fell in love with the area. And the area was kind of untapped, if you will. But truth be told, doesn't matter. Like there
Yeah.
could be a dog trainer across the street from me. I'm still going to make it work. There's a Dwayne Reed and a CVS like right across from each other. They still find a way to make it work. But this really seemed untapped. And I was like, you know what? I love the area. There's also big money in the area. If you look off of A1A and like the ocean, some of these houses, man, like you and I would be happy living in the pool house together.
Yeah.
And like the pool house is bigger than like is bigger than in my apartment in New York City, you know? So I fell in love with it, and there were a lot of snowbirds and a lot of people that were from New York in the area. So the vibe was still the same. And I was like, I think I can make this work. And then COVID hit.
Yeah.
And just before COVID hit, we had purchased a place here, and it just worked out that when it hit and we had to lock down and we had to close up temporarily in New York before we can open, we were here. And I was like, you know what? We need to stay here. It doesn't make sense to go back to New York. Things are crazy.
Yeah.
And it made sense that when everything locked down, I was like, you know what? I can make this work. Like I can turn a garage into, this is my garage right now. I can turn it into a place where I can record, where I can train. And I think this is a place we can be where it works for the family. So the priority was really the family, the kids, having space where you're not living in a box where someone lives above you, beneath you, to the left of you, to the right of you, and you're trying to make it, work with dogs and stuff.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. So you brought up one of the things I had on the list I wanted to talk about anyways, obviously. So city versus suburb training. I mean, I'm assuming you're kind of in a more suburban area where you're at now, and there's a ton of environmental differences past just weather changes and all of that. What are some of the biggest differences as far as like needs of clients and like how you've needed to address that stuff you've seen?
The needs are pretty much the same. The approach, I feel like here, allows me to take more of a scenic route and take more time than I may be able to, or the client may be able to in New York City. New York City's there's some pros and cons, right? If you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere, and I think that applies for the dogs as well. But sometimes it greatly benefits us to be able to take our time with a dog. That might be building a relationship with the dog. That might be helping them experience like mini successes for things that are less challenging than what they actually struggle with. Whereas in New York City, sometimes you got to throw them into the ring and you got to make it work. And it's like, bro, I know we haven't practiced as much, but there's no other way about it. And sometimes you speed things up and you get it done, but it can hurt you in other ways as well. So I think just being able to enjoy taking my time a little bit more with these dogs has been a lot of fun for me.
Yeah, definitely. And, from the standpoint of like, working at the facility back in New York, so do you pretty much have things there in a place where they don't need that much support from you, where you kind of just come in and check in, or what's kind of your role up there right now?
I'm always trying to perfect that, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it has to do with the team that you have.
Yeah.
COVID sort of messed things up a little bit too, where like after COVID, like people were like, oh my gosh, like I'm working 5 days and 5 days is too overwhelming. And I'm like, wait, what? Like you get 2 days off. Like, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? Like you're playing with dogs like all day.
Yeah.
And like some people didn't want to work. And then some people were like, I'm going to end up doing my own thing. And it was like, holy cow. For a while, it was fine. It was hard to find a good group. Right now, we have a fantastic group. And one of the biggest things about the group and what makes it fantastic is not necessarily their skill set, which all of them skill wise are just improving, getting better and better every day. So I'm definitely not knocking their skill set, but it's more their outlook and their energy, and like it almost sounds cheesy, but like the positivity, like they're coming in, 100%. They're happy and they give a shit about the dogs, and they're willing to work and they're willing to do this stuff. And it's like the team chemistry amongst them is like great. All it really takes is like one bad egg, man, one like negative Nancy, and like from there it snowballs.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So right now we have a good group, and that makes it easier for me to practice some things while I'm here. I have someone that I train with who's like a training partner, associate of mine. We train some dogs, experiment, do some things. I get to do what I love, which is I'm really good at working with dogs and working with the individual, working with the client, with that handler, with that pet dog owner. Things grew, and before you knew it, I'm managing employees and I'm figuring this out. And it's all these things that took me away from what I was good at. And it's cool because I take on the challenge, I bring it on, and everything is fantastic. But it took me away from what I also enjoy. So I think the cool thing now is with the team that is everything I just described, it allows me to comfortably be here, check in with them. We use an app called Slack, see where they are with the board and trains, with this, with that, answer any questions that they have, still be involved, and then come back every 6 or 7 weeks and be with them for 2 to 3, and then actually like be motivated to like work with them, see the dogs that they have, figure out, you know, what needs to be tweaked, bring back some things that I've learned. And that's kind of how it's working right now. So it is sustaining itself, but we have like a really good admin. We have a really good manager. We have really good head trainers, like handlers and stuff. So they're the ones that really allow me to do this and make me being here and also Lindsay being here far less stressed, because with a team that is not as good as they are, it's not as fun being over here. So yeah, right now it's sustaining itself, but it's sustaining itself because I can be away and practice and go to them, and right now it's working beautifully.
That's awesome. Yeah, it seemed like, you know, ever since you started posting a lot of the like Florida stuff and you're getting a lot of dogs down there and stuff, it seemed almost like that's been like the hard reset for you just from the outside looking in to like kind of get back to the roots of things, which is like you're just training dogs, you're at your house, right? They're a part of your family and all that. And God, I mean, I could totally empathize with the standpoint of things where how things just like kind of snowball and evolve, and suddenly it's like you have this facility and you have all these responsibilities past training dogs, and it's like by the time you get to actually go in and train the dogs, you're so tired from all the other things. It's like, are you giving your best work? And dude, I could totally feel that. I mean, we have anywhere from like 12 to 14 employees at a time, and I find myself, you know, every couple months needing to give myself that little check of like, let's, you know, take a step back from this area and focus on this area a little bit, to kind of keep yourself motivated and sharp with stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because there's motivation and you want to be motivated.
Yeah.
Right. Here's the reality. Like, we're not always going to be motivated.
Sure.
So we need to be consistent.
Yeah.
You know, like, not always going to be motivated. So you have to be disciplined. And I'll work. Like, there's very few people that will do what you and I are capable of doing. Like, it's a grind that no one will really understand. But as much as possible, if you can make that discipline also fun where you can be motivated, that's everything. And I think being able to be in Florida and dabble and experiment and get hands-on and practice how I break things down and how I articulate material down to owners, especially stuff that I'm doing maybe differently or tweaking or doing things a little bit newer than I may have in the past. Like, being able to have that work with the system that I had before and go, okay, now that I'm doing this new stuff, how do I break it down in a way that's easy and digestible for people? And it has me motivated again, you know, so I'm happy about that.
Yeah, that's awesome. How much of the move down to Florida and all this change had to do with, so you have 2 kids now, obviously. Didn't that kind of time out around the same time you moved down there?
Yeah, I mean, everything was for the family.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You have to prioritize them, and in a weird way, you prioritize the business because the business is the family, but
Sure.
you have to do it in a way where everyone's happy wife, happy life, happy kids, everything. So how do you make it work? How do you find a way to be super dad, so that the kids can grow, they have the space, they're doing everything. I can be involved, I can be with them, but I can still work. And Florida is what made that work. And it's really interesting because a lot of times people ask me, well, are you going to get a facility here? And how are you going to do it here in Florida? Right now, I have no desire to open up another facility here, but I don't know what that's going to be like when my kids are in school. Like, I have a 1-year-old son, I have a 3-year-old daughter. They're both at home right now. You know, eventually they'll be at school and I'll have all of this extra time that I don't have right now because it's a grind, man. Like, you know, I'm very scheduled. My kids, I told you this is why we're doing this at 8:15 p.m. at night. My son is in bed by 7. My daughter's in bed by 8. They're up by 6:30. You know, my first session with the dogs are like at 6:30 in the morning. So like, you're doing that. Like, I'm grinding outside of being with kids and being with dogs during their nap time, which is 12:30 to like 2:30. And then when they go to bed. So, yeah, man, everything here has worked out time-wise, but all decisions that we've made have been really, really for the family, you know?
Yeah, that's awesome. So a couple of the big things I wanted to talk about from like a training standpoint, just I'm kind of like going down the list here. One of them in particular was talking about like dogs and children and stuff like that. You know, us as trainers, obviously one of the big things I feel like we get asked a lot is, you know, when people are expecting children or bringing a new dog into a house where there's existing children and stuff like that. And a colleague of mine up in Canada one time said something. So she had a kid and she made a post one time discussing, you know, until you have a kid yourself, you know, as a trainer, you know, you start looking at all those things that you used to coach your clients on, like you should do this or you shouldn't do this. And not that any of it is inaccurate by any means or wrong, but it's like it all, like once you're thrown into that boat, you start realizing how certain things you may coach are kind of unrealistic and all that kind of stuff. And obviously you're firsthand, right? You got 2 kids, you're running a training center basically out of your house with children, right? I'm really curious to get into the conversation of like dogs and babies or dogs and young children and see what you thought it was going to be like going into it and what it actually kind of wound up being.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a bit of a loaded one in regards to the answer, but I think definitely eye-opening. You know, like you look at some things and you go, oh wow, okay, like this is the time where you had time. This is the time where like when this kid is like really active, like they're incapable of like understanding like certain limits. So you have to really manage. And I think the balance, what I've been trying to do more is just understand that management is a necessity, regardless of whether it's an extreme dog or a simple dog. Like you have to manage. But the trick that I've been trying to dabble with is, especially for owners, is how do you practice safe management in a way that doesn't stagnate or plateau the training. So it's like, listen, you do have to manage. The dog has to be put away at times. You know, you have to be doing this. But at the same time, I want you to still be training so that we can help change how the dog feels emotionally. Like work toward your management. Maybe you'll always be managing, but managing a well-oiled machine is a hell of a lot easier than managing like a problem business or a problem dog or something like that. So how do we get you to a place where you're managing something that is like smooth and your dog is still progressing instead of just staying stuck? So I think that's probably been the biggest thing in regards to just being wise with how you include dogs and babies in the mix together. And then also knowing the age, like my daughter right now she's just great with dogs. And like, she understands that, you know, we get dogs and she's like, well, can I like play with him right now? Or can I pet him? Not yet, baby. We're working on that. She's like, well, is this dog ready right now? Oh, the dog's not ready. Okay, well, let me know. And I'm like, hey, Shay, this is what we're going to be doing right now. Like, you can be included this way. And like, she's got it down. Like in the backyard, you're going to be here, but you're not going to be moving or running around yet. And like, she's good. She helps me with prepping the food for dogs. She's understanding like certain games that we're going to play. Hey, like you're going to get to throw the ball for this dog, or you're going to get to do this thing, but this is how. So it's cool. The one thing that has been a hell of a lot easier than I thought it would be is actually training the kids. I thought that would be much more difficult.
Sure.
And truth be told, man, just living it and being consistent, the kids pick up. Like I haven't needed to train the kids outside of just living and doing what needs to be done. I'm trying to find the way to really word that, but
I mean, they're like reflections of the things we do, right? Like they emulate what they see. So it's like if we're showing them this is the way we treat dogs, this is the way we interact with dogs and stuff. Obviously, there's going to be training and guidance and stuff like that goes into it, but you're not fighting this uphill battle of if you're living an unhealthy relationship with your dog, then you're telling the kids to do something totally different than what you're doing. You know?
And exactly, and it's awesome because like people are like, oh my gosh, like, you know, they even say this about my son, and my son, his level, he's 1, so his level of comprehension is not there, but like, wow, they're so good with the dogs. And it's just a matter of just, this is the way it needs to be. And the kids pick up on it. Like my daughter's 3, and I don't know, man, like watch her and how she is with dogs, and like that can be the example for the average kid on the street that we're worried about how they're interacting with other dogs, and it's all by her just observing.
Yeah, it's so interesting. It's like, and then you look at the other side of things, which is like how much of that is just because we're professionals that understand how things learn. Like I remember when Tyler had his first kid, him and I were talking, I think it was in Buffalo, and he's talking about I was like, yeah, so what, what's it like? Is it the same as you thought it was going to be? Is it different than you thought it was going to be? And he's like, it's kind of fun. Like I'll like find myself training the kid and like breaking down in my head, like what quadrants I'm using and this and that. Cause that's the way Tyler fucking does things. Right. But it's like, but he's talking about things that way. And it's like, no different than, I'll look at sometimes or we'll look at an owner that's struggling with something with their dog. And in the back of our mind, we're kind of like, oh, well, just like, don't let him do that. But it's easier said than done. You know what I mean? So yeah. it's just it's an interesting conversation. And so many of those things you mentioned are just good, fascinating, like talking points, I feel like.
Yeah. I've really been focusing a lot on, the emotional feeling of the dog, like how the dog feels about situations.
Yeah,
really changes a lot of their behavior, and just considering that like emotional response brings emotional feeling brings on involuntary response. So it's like how do we go about changing how the dog feels about, like, even if there's a gate up between like a baby and a kid, like a dog feeling better when the baby's around or when the kid is out and stuff like that. I've been really focusing a lot about that in general, not just with kids, but especially with kids, changing how the dog feels about a situation, which takes time, but like long term, it can kind of get you out of sticky situations when a dog's behaving really inappropriate. Yeah. And it was really because like they feel crappy about this whole thing. So how do we change that?
Yeah. Does that have to do with the whole Windows concept that you and like J-Jack and stuff have been delving into?
Windows is definitely a piece of the puzzle. I mean, that's more...
I'm not super familiar with the Windows side of things, so.
Oh, I absolutely. I have a course on it on Consider the Dog and everything. Yeah. So it's great. I love the Windows. I think when you look at Windows, it's a nice way to balance or be considerate of a way to fulfill a dog, and be considerate of their needs while also being considerate of like management that is needed and teaching a dog context, just like you have to teach a kid context. There's nothing wrong with playing tag. Unfortunately, you can't play tag at dinner time. Unfortunately, you can't play tag when we're watching a movie. So being able to communicate that to a child is one thing. But what about being able to communicate that to a dog that doesn't speak English or Spanish or whatever the language is that you're speaking? How can you get them to understand contextually appropriate behavior? And that's what Windows does. In regards to emotional response, it's really just association. We see things like this with poor communication all the time. So you look at what started with good intentions. A dog sees... give me 1 second. Hold that thought. I want to fix this camera and why it keeps timing out on me. Apologize.
Oh, you're fine. Technical difficulties are a way of our life here.
Yes. Always technical difficulties. And I'll send this stuff to you guys too. I have 2 cameras going right now, so pretty sweet.
Oh, sweet.
But how do we... Everything's association. So you end up with a dog, for example, that initially was reactive toward another dog. When you're on a walk, he sees another dog, he's reacting. So now as a handler, we're looking to fix that situation. You tried rewarding the dog, but the dog is not interested in rewards. So you correct the dog, and at some point the correction stops the behavior. But then the mistake that I've made, and I see a lot of people making, is we're striving for perfection.
Yeah.
So the next time around, you end up with a dog that is not full out lunging the way that he was as a result of however you chose to correct, but he's not perfect. He or she's still getting worked up. They're still feeling crappy about the situation. So because it's not the way that we envisioned it, we correct again, or we interrupt, or we do whatever, something. And what starts to happen if the communication is poor is you end up with a dog that goes, there's no way to win.
Yeah.
So when I see this dog I'm not really certain why I'm feeling this leash pop or this remote or whatever it is. All I know is that I feel this when I see you. It must be because of you.
Yeah.
So now the correction that is the thing that's needed at some point is the thing that's making the dog feel crappy about being outside when they see other dogs. So there's no way for the dog to be successful. And I think a lot of it has to do with us being wise about what we choose to catch and where we choose to reinforce and help. And I think raising a kid and not being too strict too soon with certain things, being martial arts and not and seeing how like a black belt will say, hey, great job to a white belt that does an armbar, and then all of a sudden the brown belt does an armbar way better than the white belt, and they're like, no, fix this, and they have all these details, and it's like, why were you so detailed with that person who has a better armbar than me as a white belt, and you said good job for me? And a lot of it is just really understanding how to help the dog feel successful and help the dog win. Yeah. So I think like the association that the dog has, it's easier if you're not too strict too soon. Yeah. So it helps the dog understand like this is happening as a result of my behavior, not because when I see a dog I'm going to get corrected. And changing how a dog feels emotionally about a situation is and what that represents and what association they have is something that I didn't spend much time on in the past. And it's something that I really, really, if anything, prioritize a little bit more than I used to.
Yeah, there's so much to unpack with all of that you just said right there, because I feel like that goes hand in hand with like when you mentioned we'll correct for the response initially, but then the second time, because we're chasing the perfection, we correct again. And then, there's no way to escape this kind of mentality, that it's something I've kind of been looking at over the last few years in my training, especially because reactivity, obviously, I feel like is the number one thing we just see all over the place. There's this way to stop it. There's this way to stop it, et cetera, et cetera. And I struggle so much with when I see a lot of different trainers or whatever discussing stuff like correcting the loading sequence all the time and things like double downs and all that. And again, not that I think anybody's terrible for using any of those things, but it feels like we're falling into that trap of chasing the perfection with the correction as opposed to using almost, the correction to bring the behavior down to a manageable place to then change the feeling of things, which is where the force-free community hates us, is because we don't talk about that side of things enough. We're just suppressing behavior, which we are, but we're suppressing it to give us a better shot to then do the things that they want us to do ultimately,
100%. Yeah, like sometimes you got to put out a little bit of the fire before you can kind of build on that ground. And I feel it's a balance, and everything that you're doing is just understanding where that line is, because that balance will vary from dog to dog. Yeah. You know what I mean? And sometimes there's some things that I'm like, man, because our relationship sucks, I'm not even going to address this because I know how you're going to interpret this. So right now we're going to avoid this situation. And I think that's one thing that Florida has allowed me to do, is that I can take more time than I may have been able to in the past, where as sometimes like in New York City, you don't always have that option. So you have to be very, very smart with how you maneuver.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you on TikTok much?
You know what? I had started TikTok. The answer is no. I have it. I probably should be on it more. I'm on Instagram more than anything else. I post seldomly on Facebook because obviously it's an older platform. Yeah, it's really Instagram and Consider the Dog that I'm on mostly. I should do more on TikTok. It's just I hate doing stuff that I can't give 100% to. Mm-hmm. And right now I wouldn't be able to do that, and I don't want to half-ass something, but I do have a TikTok page. Yeah, I started it so long ago, so early ago, and then I'm doing nothing with it.
Yeah, it's such a. We also kind of, we just had a media meeting the other day with a team talking about how we want to start prioritizing that platform more, because we've had it for a couple of years, but we've had minimal growth on it. We had maybe 5,000 followers or something for as long as we've been on it. And I think a lot of my hesitancy on it has just been, and this is funny because a lot of our last couple podcast guests we've had on have been these mega TikTok stars, right? These 2 million subs, this, that. And the consistent thing that they all hit us with is just how freaking brutal of a platform it is, right? But the reason why I tie that in is because, just in, even with the small following we have, anything we post is just, I mean, it's like a war zone as far as people coming on and commenting, just, critiquing the absolute living fuck out of anything you post, basically, right? and 90% of it is coming from, I feel like glorified like internet trolls, but there is the 10% of it that's coming from these trainers that I know rightfully want to do good work. They care about the dogs, and I try to look at it from a positive light and take all the criticism as, a grain of salt, but like, let's look at this and see how much validity there is to it. And as we've been on it, it has been interesting how it's kind of opened my eyes to looking at different things from the standpoint of what you're talking about, like even things like emotional responses to things and caring about how the dog feels about situations. And, from my background as like a sport dog trainer when I first started and things, like everything is so binary in that world, right? Like you create your motivation and then you teach these behaviors and you correct these unwanted behaviors. And it's kind of like everything just fits together like this perfect puzzle without caring too much about that side of things. And I saw somebody post somewhat recently, I think they commented on something of ours. I went on their page, I'm looking at their channel, and they were talking about back to the conversation of like suppressing behaviors. This person is like, yeah, I don't have a problem with using corrections, but it's like, we stop an unwanted behavior and we suppress it. And it's like, yeah, that could be a better response from the standpoint of management purposes, but like suppressed behavior versus outward display of unwanted behavior. Basically, what they were trying to say is that they're like the same thing, right? And you could use it again to gain yourself the leverage to work through the problem, but a suppressed behavior without the change of emotional response is basically the same thing in the dog's mind as the outward display of it. If that makes sense what I'm getting at. I'm kind of rambling here right now.
It's interesting.
So again, go ahead.
Yeah. No. Continue.
Well, no, I was just, I try to look at these things because, again, our biggest critiques that we get as balance trainers, I would say, is like when we're punishing an unwanted behavior, right? Or we're stopping an unwanted behavior or something like that, that there's, again, you're just suppressing the behavior, right? And we're not focused on that outward display. So it's like, as we're posting stuff on these different platforms, do we want to start moving in that direction of highlight? We highlight the quick stop from the standpoint of, I feel like, to give people hope in situations, right? So like when a client looks and sees a before and after video, even if the process isn't complete yet, hey, this dog that was being really reactive, or this dog that was being aggressive towards people or resource guarding these things or whatever it may be, we're able to get some serious headway with that behavior where you could actually see it right in front of your face. But the actual long-term solution is going to take much longer. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I totally get that. I think another thing for people especially the internet and people that actually care, is really considering, try to word this properly.
Yeah.
Considering what can fall under the category of the word correction.
Sure.
Because technically correction means to fix, right? In order to fix something, you have to address something, but how you choose to address something is like, you can correct things in a number of ways. So sure. For the most part, when people think of correction, they think of using an aversive, obviously something that is uncomfortable. And in some situations, I think it really, really matters how we use that aversive and what our intention is for after we use it. And this is another thing that I've been focusing a little bit more on, which I think gives us an opportunity to be a little bit more fair to a dog, depending on where they are in the stage or phase of their training.
Sure.
So I want to correct a dog, but I want to correct a dog how? And I think of it this way. So I can use an aversive to reinforce a behavior, aka get more of a behavior. I can use an aversive to get less of a behavior, punish, right? What I've been dabbling more with is accepting the dog's adjustment in earlier stages of training, which I don't want to get too technical here, but if we're looking at it, in theory, it's a form of negative reinforcement.
Sure.
Right? So my dog is doing something inappropriate. Let's say I pop with the leash or remote or whatever. I add something that the dog deems uncomfortable. And as a result, they adjust to an alternative behavior that I'm happy with.
Yeah.
In theory, that's negative reinforcement.
Yeah.
Right? Like I've added, and as a result, I've removed what is going to be a cycle of me giving you an opportunity to make a choice. Let's say, for example, trying to think in my mind, visualizing, I'm messing around with a dog, and it could be treats, it could be a toy, it could be a ball, it could be tug. And now the dog loves this game, and I end up asking the dog to place. And for whatever reason, the dog's obsessed with a toy and doesn't go. So now I add a leash pop, and let's say the dog does not go to place. I say, nope, which is like, Ron, we're going to try this again.
Yeah.
But I'm going to give you the opportunity to be successful without my help. Now, my help is something that should help, but is also something that the dog should actively seek to avoid.
Yeah.
And if my help is too pleasant, dog is always going to seek it. So I have to make that help unpleasant. So dog doesn't do it after the pop. I say, nope. I'm going to come around to asking them again. The command, place. I'm going to wait before the leash pop, before my help, because I want them to be able to be successful. Yeah. And if I say place and then they go, fantastic. I can throw that ball again, or the game can turn on again, or they can get the food, whatever it is. Or I say place, the dog doesn't do it. I pop again, and then they go, and the same reward turns on. I, in theory, am reinforcing the alternative behavior. So I'm happy with their adjustment. That would be the equivalent of you're speeding on a highway. You're doing 100 and a 65. And I'm a trooper. I pull up behind you. I throw my lights on. And once you see the lights in your rear view mirror, you slow down to 65. And I go, I'm good with that. You didn't know what the speed limit was. I shut my lights off. I let you go. I'm trying to reinforce and teach you what the speed limit was, how to be successful, how to do the thing. So if I'm adding this aversive, I'm happy with your adjustment that you're making beautiful. In theory, I'm reinforcing an alternative behavior. I'm happy with your adjustment. Next day comes along, you're speeding again. I go, oh, geez, this guy's doing 100. I pull up behind you, throw my lights on. You slow down to 65. I shut them off, and I go, all right, that's it. Once I've seen that you can be successful, once I've seen that you know what to do, and I've spent time doing that, day 3 comes around, and this is not, doesn't have to be the 3rd time. I'm just giving an example. This guy is still speeding. Now, when I pull up behind you, I throw my lights on and you slow down to 65. I don't care. I'm not interested. I'm no longer interested in your adjustment. So in order to punish this behavior, because I'm not interested in your adjustment. If I was interested in your adjustment, I'm interested in reinforcing an alternative behavior. At this point, you knew what the alternative behavior was. You've been successful doing it. Now I'm interested in punishing the actual crime, or whatever you want to call it. So I have to pull you over, essentially stopping progression. And I'm gonna give you another example for anybody that might be watching this. I have to stop you. So when I get behind you and you slow down to 65, I got to do whatever is necessary to actually get the vehicle stopped. Because once I stop progression, aka the bad behavior, we're gonna get to that in a second. Now I'm going to have my punishment event with you. Punishment event could be whatever the dog deems uncomfortable. It could be painful. It could hurt, doesn't have to. It just has to be out of the dog's control, because their adjustment doesn't get them out of the consequence. That sort of makes sense?
No, so I 100% agree.
Something I've been dabbling with a lot. I want to make sure that by the time I'm correcting via punishing a dog, that I am aware that they knew what the right choice was to make. And now they realize that, hey, listen, if you lunge after somebody aggressively, and I pop you with the leash or remote and you adjust and we keep walking, I'm not interested in you slowing down to 65. We've had that conversation. I've shown you what I expect. Now I'm going to punish you. So, man, after I shoot someone in the head, if you go blink, or I punch your best friend in the face, you go blink, sit down. You're not really interested in the fact that I sat. Like, if I know that gets me out of a behavior, I can pop off. And then when you catch me, I go, oh, and I adjust and we're gone. If it was that easy, then you're just nurturing compliance when caught. So I know I kind of went off into a wormhole here, but that's something in regards to correction.
Yeah.
And we're talking about like the internet world and reading that. It's like they got to understand it's far deeper,
Sure.
and there's far more details than what the surface or that little video that they're watching on TikTok or Instagram will show.
Yeah. No, I mean, I feel like, what you're kind of describing, correct me if I'm wrong, is like we're almost like kind of, as far as looking for the effort, right? Almost like free shaping with a negative reinforcement a little bit, right? Kind of an example, I feel like that might be similar to that as far as if I'm training a dog, right? So like, let's say I'm trying to get a dog to get onto a place cot or something like that. They're very resistant of getting onto it initially. And maybe my total goal is getting them all the way onto that place cot, but maybe initially I'll be using the negative reinforcement, and the removal of pressure will come at successive approximation, right? Like incrementally rewarding steps along the way, right? So moving towards it, getting one paw on it a couple times, getting two paws on it, and incrementally helping them through that negative reinforcement to get to where it is we want them to get to. So when I give the big correction later on for them not getting onto it, we've kind of taught and established that routine a little bit more. Now, the one, and this kind of segues into another topic here, but for your example with the lights, right? Using the lights in order to get the person to slow down, the lights get the person to slow down with the cop, right? And then ultimately pulling them over. For that to be true, wouldn't the lights turning on have to have an inherent aversive status to it already?
Yeah, I mean, I think for humans, I use that analogy
because we know what it means.
Just the sight of a trooper.
Yeah.
Like my wife, man, she could be doing, the speed limit could be 65. She could be doing 60. And if she sees a trooper, she'll slow down. And it's like, what do you do? So it's like just seeing that. If you see that there's lights on behind you, it's like, oh my gosh. So there's definitely already an association.
Yeah.
So I think for the example, it makes sense. But definitely there would need to be some sort of an aversive or an interrupter, anything that interrupts the dog and like stops progression.
Yeah. So
I think that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So that then segues to, so obviously I think I saw you reposted the IACP's post about, e-collars towards whatever, the International Association of, I don't know. There was some sort of back and forth going on between the IACP and some sort of the K9 training.
Yep.
What is the organization that they were sending that to? Do you remember?
Oh man, I'm forgetting it now.
I know. I'm blanking on it.
It's the other one.
It's more of the general.
I can't even remember it.
Yeah, whatever. Okay, so one of the things. So I loved the letter they wrote. One of my biggest things right now, though, is I feel like as we're trying to push to like quote unquote like decriminalize the e-collar, like one of the biggest selling points we're trying to push is that it's not an aversive tool. Right? And all these examples we're describing, right? It has to have some sort of inherent aversiveness to it. And my fear is that as we move down that path of continuing to say it's not an aversive tool, it's not an aversive tool, it's not an aversive tool, if we get to a point of legislation of like, hey, we could use the e-collars under the guise that it's not an aversive tool and this and that could put us in more sticky ground later on. Yeah.
Well, 100%. First off, it's an aversive tool. Like call a spade a spade. It's very important to understand that. But can you use it in a non-aversive manner? Like that's a whole other thing that defeats the purpose of like why you would use it
in the first place. Yeah, if we want a cue, we would just use a freaking sound box on the dog's neck or something like that.
And it's the same thing with a leash. Like, can you use it in a non-aversive manner? That's a whole nother like discussion. But largely, we are trying to deter a dog from doing something when we're using a leash. And you could either just hold them back in a way where they don't care, and it's not an aversive, but then you're just holding a dog back and you're not really changing much. Or you can use it in a way where it is unpleasant. Like if I do something stupid and there's an unpleasant experience, and you don't deprive me of learning from that consequence, like that's really important. You know what I mean? And you can reinforce a behavior. And this is the example that I always give with like the flame and the stove. If my daughter, I go, hey, don't touch the flame on the stove, it's hot. I hope that she never touches the flame, right? But if the day comes where I go, hey, baby, don't touch that flame. Remember, it's hot. I'm going to the bathroom. I'll be right back. And as I'm leaving, she's like, don't touch the flame. Let me check this out. that flame better be hot and it better suck.
Yeah.
Because if it ends up being awesome, all it does is just nurture me being a liar, and it doesn't reinforce her listening to me.
Or if it's just mildly aversive in that moment too. I think that's another really difficult part of this conversation is like, we want to be fair about all this stuff, but so much of this push of like, we pair it as positive, we pair it as positive, we pair it as positive, and then we need it to be an aversive later on. It's just like, we're kind of shooting ourselves in the foot a little bit, you know?
Yeah. And then
but it's a balance,
you end up getting comfortable with the sensation. Like there are very rare, there's like some rare situations where maybe you need a dog to feel like a super fearful shutdown dog that's had an experience. You need them to understand how they can control an aversive, but for the most part, like you're trying to make it something that they want to avoid. Yeah, like that's the goal. And if you're trying to make it or trying to spend time making it pleasant, you're gonna end up down the road trying to use it unpleasant. The dog maybe won't have an issue with it, and that's a problem. Yeah, you know, I got to start this thing again. I must. This camera that I barely use must have a
20-minute shut off. So we ran into that same boat. We ran into that same boat with ours. So if you're not using an actual cam, this is actually funny because we struggled with this for a long time. If you're not using an actual camcorder, like the cameras have like a certain record up to time that's like 23 minutes or something. But we actually just bought like a brand new camcorder that will record 100% through until the memory card is filled. So if you're looking to record for long periods,
that's what I have. I have a GH5, which is great. I have that on the slider, and then I have this other one, which is my brother's. It's an older model, a GH3, and it's just timing out. And it's like, come on. So there's got to be a feature. I got to YouTube it and my own problem later on.
So the question then is, right? So like, what is the balance of if our selling point is that it's a quote unquote nice or non-aversive tool? How do we change this balance of the perception of why we use it, obviously, while still not sugarcoating it, so that we avoid some of those potential problems we could see, I feel like, by mismarketing it?
Well, I mean, nature corrects. Yeah. Right? And nature's version of a correction is not going to be as considerate of us. So if we can replicate nature in a much more considerate or fair way, however you want to word that, like, why not? Yeah. Like, why not like do that? Because listen, man, if I don't replicate nature when you're running across the street for that squirrel or that tennis ball, guess what? The car ain't going to be forgiven or forgiving. Right? If I don't replicate nature with that rattlesnake or whatever, the rattlesnake venom ain't going to be forgiving. Right? So it's like, if I can get you to make better decisions in a way that is more forgiving than that, but still get the message across, like, why wouldn't you want to replicate that? Because deprivation of the dog learning from that consequence is going to have us putting up with this situation until the dog passes away. So it's like, why not learn from the situation so you actually stop doing it so we don't have to put up with it? Yeah. You know what I mean? Something as simple as like dealing with a dog that's running across the street for whatever it is that is a dangerous life or death situation. I have to put up with you doing that and say, this is how you are, when really I can just have you learn from something that goes, oh, maybe I don't want to do that. Oh, this is a better choice. And like, we can move on, and like, dogs are intelligent enough. Why deprive them of something they can learn from and move on? They're intelligent. Why treat them dumber than they are? Like, dogs are not dumb. Yeah. They're smart.
More fragile than they are. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that or treat them like they're significantly more fragile than they are. You know, I feel like sometimes we look at dogs like they're literally made of glass. You know what I mean? Whether that's, forget corrections from the standpoint of, an collar or something like that. It's like just from like their emotional state, right? We hold them back from experiencing things that are natural that they may perceive as scary because we genuinely don't think that they're capable of withstanding that, emotional pressure of thinking something is scary, Yeah.
Yeah. Can you, like, the things that they would take in nature are far worse than, a stimulation, on their neck or anything like that. Like, when they were out there in packs, like in the wilderness, it was way worse. And now it's like, oh no, they're our little babies and, oh, they can't take that.
Yeah. And most of the time you learn and you move on.
Yeah.
Like, you know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like, it's not the end of the world. Like, you learn and you want to go, oh, like maybe I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or they don't learn and they continue to do it. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yes.
It's make good things awesome, make inappropriate or bad things like suck, and dogs will do what works and what doesn't work largely.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think, obviously, like you were saying, you learn from it and you move on. I think what stops a lot of dogs from learning from it from like again, correction standpoint or implementing a aversive to stop a behavior, obviously, is there's a lot of emphasis on using corrections for obedience related purposes, right? So, down, sits, place, comes, this, that, and not a lot of emphasis on using it simply for an unwanted behavior with things. And I feel like you run a lot more of a risk of confusion when implementing it for obedience related purposes, because I feel like in a lot of cases that is a confusion problem, not necessarily your dog is intentionally blowing you off problem, as opposed to just stopping counter surfing, right? Or stopping digging a hole in the backyard where they truly can just realize, oh, doing this thing is unpleasant, right?
I think you have to be smart. The cool thing is that if you can be fair with obedience and how you teach it, and knowing that a dog knows it, and create a dog's eagerness and willingness and desire to want to do it because of the reward that it yields, then you can dabble with using an aversive for that in a fair way. And if you can be good with that, then all of a sudden using an aversive in any other manner to teach any other rule, it should be easy. But it's just when you're going strong into correcting a dog for not performing obedience that they were never really properly taught, now you're running into problematic territory.
Yeah. Yeah. I see that a lot. I would say with a lot of the balance trainers that aren't as keenly aware on like teaching and, utilizing motivation and stuff like that, for sure. And that's where I would say I see the biggest issue with a lot of the correction stuff, where it's like, God, people are just correcting a dog for not getting on the place, and it's like the dog is like running to them to try to avoid it because they think it's a come command, and we're like, they're blowing us off. And that's where I really see the most like unfair, I would say, e-collar use, I feel like.
Yeah, it's interesting. But I think with today and everything that you can learn from online or you can see from other people, like there's pros and cons to all the information that's out there. You know what I mean? But it's all definitely out there. It's just a matter of knowing what to believe and what not to believe, and watching what works and what doesn't work. And as long as we're showing the end results and people are able to see that, I think humans are smart enough to make responsible decisions based off of what they're seeing.
Yeah. No, I think that's 100% accurate. So you dabbled into the windows concept briefly, where you discussed it's, generally the idea of it is teaching a time and a place for things. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that concept and what struck you about it the first time you started learning about it?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing that we're always trying to do is we're trying to find a balance, right? How can you give the human what they want while also being considerate of what the dog needs? And I feel like sometimes, clients will reach out to you and it's like, hey, I'm looking for this, this, and this. And it's like, well, geez, like that's not fair to a dog at all. Sure. But I know that you do need these things. And I think the windows allows for that happy medium, because it allows you to consider what a dog needs and make sure you hit those things while also helping a dog to understand that, like, hey, we can't give these things to you 24/7. Like, we're in this human world and there's a time and place for it. So being able to communicate certain words, certain signals, certain cues, and essentially what they are markers, having these markers resonate with a dog so that they can understand how to exist in the world and understand when it's time to play and be silly, when it's time to do your own thing, because right now I'm busy and I'm on a Zoom call, but yeah, you can play with that toy, but it's not really with me. Do your thing. Knowing when to engage with the dog and how to engage with the dog during their outlet in a way that gives them an opportunity to do dog things so they feel fulfilled. So it's like the same thing for me. Like, I can go to the gym, I can go to exercise, and then when I come back, I don't care what's on TV with my wife. Like, I'll sit, or you're watching Housewives. Okay, why is Andy Cohen laughing at this girl, or why is this girl crying, and why is she calling her a bitch? And I'll get into the show, But if I don't get my outlet and I don't exercise, I'll get irritable. And she knows. She's like, babe, you got to go to jiu-jitsu, like go do something, because now I'm nitpicking. And I think the same thing is with a dog. So it's like, if a human can understand how to be considerate and give a dog what they need, it becomes a lot easier in exchange for it to be realistic when we ask the dog to relax while we're at a cafe, to hang out with us while we're on a Zoom call, to be like, hey, I'm going to have you hang out on place because I'm going to be working with the baby, or I'm going to be making dinner. And the dog has actually done something, instead of their outlet being, you're just going to be on place, or their outlet being, you're going to come to the cafe with us and I expect you to just chill, but you haven't done shit in a long time. And it's like, I don't ever expect you to. So understanding how to cycle through windows is a nice way to just strike being considerate of both pet dog owner and pet.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, is it more of like a frame of reference for owners, or is it something you're actually instructing the dog? And what I mean by that is, a general rule I have for my dogs and I recommend for my clients to do with their dogs is like things like extremely rough play between multi-dog households, or high energy games like chasing a ball or really intense tug and stuff like that. I always say play with those things outdoors with your dogs, and they could develop that association where in your backyard, for example, you could kind of go buck wild and, obviously with parameters still, but you can kind of do what you want to do, burn off your energy, kind of go ham. But inside, the expectation is the things that we practice with them are going to be more calming things. The types of toys that I give them are going to be more solo, occupy yourself types of toys. So I'm not necessarily teaching the dog something different aside from them to associate a place with a certain feeling, right? Or is it something you're actually going through the process? I think you mentioned like markers you're using to establish certain windows.
So, I mean, it definitely makes sense what you said about like exercise and the craziness and everything happening outside. And I don't have a problem necessarily if people want to bring that into their house, but they got to be able to control it.
Sure.
Because if the dog doesn't have a time and place, then that becomes a problem. But then there's also some times where like the dog, man, like maybe I do need to build something for you inside because you're really shut down and afraid, and I'm going to build this love for this thing, whatever this thing is, that eventually once you love it and you're motivated and it's a reinforcer and like you're really, really eager to do it, I'm going to start challenging you because you're only going to get that outside. So like there's different variations, but in regards to windows, it's cool because so there's 4 windows, right? And truth be told, if you want your own window system and you want to have 10 windows, like who cares?
Yeah.
But really what you're doing is and I learned this stuff from J-Jack, by the way. Awesome guy.
Yep.
No ego there. Like the dude's the man.
Yeah.
But you have a play window and there's a word that you want to be a signal versus a cue. I can get into that in a second. The signal suggests that like, yes, this is about to go down. So like the word that I use for opening up play is ready.
Yep.
Now, when I say ready, basically what the play window is it means you and I are about to engage in something really fun together, some type of game, some type of outlet, some type of activity, like it's going to go down. It could be playing for food, playing for a toy, personal play of roughhousing. But when I say ready, like I'm coming alive and then I'm going to go get that toy. Then I'm going to go get your leash or whatever it is. So I want that signal to come before the cues that a dog picks up on. And like the cue could be, some people after they watch their show go, oh, all right, let's go get you out. And like just the dog gets jazzed and God forbid you before you want to go grab a beer from the fridge, the dog is going crazy, or it could be turning crinkling a bag of like treats and maybe you don't want the dog to get it, but that cue could be something that has a dog go crazy. So I want to make sure the signal comes before the cue, and the signal is the truth teller. The cue is the liar. That signal is going to be that word ready, because there might be a time where I pick up your toy. There might be a time where I grab your treats. There might be a time where, I don't know, I make that sound, or I put my shoes on, I put my hair in a pony, or take my glasses off. And for some people, taking their glasses off means they're going to play with the dog. There may be a time that I do all of those things, but if I don't say ready, it doesn't mean shit. So that cue that you think is leading to this, nothing holds true unless I say ready. So ready opens up play, and it means we're about to have at it. We're going to have some fun. The second window, and that's an opportunistic window. So what that means is opportunistic is like, I will present the opportunity. And if you're not gung-ho for it, like the opportunity could go away. Like I'm not going to force it. If you're not here for dinner, like I'm not going to force you to eat. It's like dinner's just gone. You know what I mean? So that the opportunity is there. If you don't take advantage of it as a dog, that's it. The other opportunistic window is the okay window. The word that I have for okay is free. And who cares about the word? It could be okay. It could be whatever you want it to be. But okay is the find your own fun window. So if there's a toy, if there's a Kong, whatever, like entertain yourself, find your own fun. You can also use that on the walk. If I'm walking you in let's go, which is the okay window, which is the work window. Work is essentially obedience. Obedience could be sit down, place, here, heel, let's go, whatever you want to call it. We're largely teaching obedience in games that I'm playing with you. So we're largely teaching obedience in play. Once you know these obedience commands and you're eager to do it and you have this association with it, I'll use that outside of the context of play in everyday real world situations. But so we have the play window. We have the okay window. The play window, the word is ready. The okay window, the word is free. The work window is obedience that we largely teach in play and then we can use outside. And then lastly is enough. Enough means the game is over, but enough also is calm down, chill out. Now, work is inevitable. Remember, I said there were two opportunistic windows. There was play and okay were opportunistic, meaning I award you the opportunity. If you don't take advantage of it, it's gone. With the okay, when I say free, I can also use that on a walk. If I'm have you walking in a let's go, which is almost like a loose heel, when I stop, I want you stopping. When I go, I want you moving with me. It's not the time for anything else. It's the time for you to pay attention to me. That's one thing. But if I say free, that's your time. You can be up ahead. That's your time to smell. That's your time if you want to run Zoomies, you want to chase squirrels, whatever limits you want to put on free, you can. That's your time to like go be a dog. But when I put you in work, heel, let's go, whatever it is, close, whatever you want to call it, now you're paying attention to me. You can use that with a walk. You can use that with your backyard. You can use free kind of that way. Now, enough is the fourth window. Enough is just calm liberty. It means the game is over. It's time to chill. But more importantly, beyond it being operantly conditioned, which means the dog is aware of the consequence, what it means, they know that. I want to create a classically conditioned involuntary response, the same way that crinkling a bag of treats creates a dog that starts to drool. When I say enough, it is happening. So in the beginning, it's not a command. I'm not enough and barking at you. Enough is when I know that I can help to not give you affection, but like woo-saw you to the point where you were just on playing and enough, and now you start to come down. If I'm touching your face or whatever it is, it's like, oh. So every time I say enough, I help you feel enough.
And does that?
This is what
I'm assuming that kind of stemmed from like, J-Jack was very popular originally with a lot of conditioned relaxation stuff. Is enough very similar to what he used to do with the massage and stuff?
Essentially, but then once it has that association, like you can see it, like on Consider the Dog, I have the window series, and you could see a dog that's in the middle of like being jazzed up for the toy that I have, and then enough, and sort of see them like sort of like melt good, enough, and then I'll put the toy in the fridge, and I'll put the toy away, like the toy is there. You learn to just chill. If you go after it, like no, hey, enough. And we really, really work on it being something that they know what it means, but then you got to take the extra time to have it be a feeling, because you can have a dog down the road, once it's like really known, see a squirrel and like, hey, you can tell them let's go or heel or whatever, and you can get that too, but you can, hey, enough, and have them like sort of like slow it down and sort of melt if you spend time on enough after your game, after your session. So that's kind of how it works. And that's a beautiful thing to like have a dog. I know the connection was unstable there for a second. To have a dog that's jazzed in a house, you free him. Yeah, you just got here, check it out. Hey, enough, chill. And they actually like, you're calm. Like you can be in liberty, you can chill, but just tone it down, bud.
Now, the one thing I always struggled with, I remember when, because again, I'm equating this kind of like the condition relaxation, because I think you used to use easy for that, right? Easy kind of meant that like relaxed state of mind as well. Was it didn't feel like there was a lot of clarity as far as how we go about conditioning that in, right? So you say, obviously, we want to create a classical conditioned association, right? That when we say enough, right, the dog actually relaxes, right? It's an involuntary, like basically suppression in that kind of arousal. How do we create that though? You know what I mean? Like, is that free shaped? Like, is that
Great question. I call it say it and make it so.
okay?
A lot of times we have when I say we, I say like pet dog owners, we lack the ability to get it to happen. It's not much different than saying here.
Sure.
And then having the ability, like you have a leash, like you can get here. People like have the dog in the backyard, here. Oh, he doesn't listen. He doesn't come. And it's like, yeah, but you have no way to get it. So like, I want to train in a way where the dog wants to do what I'm asking of them, and I hope that they do what I'm asking of them, but also be prepared that, hey, listen, man, if I ask this of you and you don't offer it, I have the ability to get it in a relatively seamless manner. And it's not much different in regards to anything that is inevitable. So that's why I said there were two opportunistic windows, play and okay, which is like the opportunity's there. If you don't take advantage of it, it's gone. I'm not upset about it. But then inevitable is work. Like when I say sit, like you're gonna sit. And when I say down, you're gonna down. When I say let's go, you're gonna let's go. And I don't mean that in this hard way. Like I just have the ability to say it and you don't offer it. I can seamlessly get it.
Sure.
Now, if I cannot seamlessly get it, that's a problem. I shouldn't be asking for something. I got to work on that a little bit more outside of the context of expecting it and making it inevitable. The same thing applies for enough. Now, when we're looking at easy, the word or the sound that I use is shh, which is essentially stay in the window that you're in, but tone it down. So if you're in the play window and I use easy, that tone it down. So let's say I'm playing tug with a dog and we're intense. Yes. And the dog is thrashing and going crazy. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make that sound and then I'm going to make it so. I'm going to like slow the game down. Good. Good. Yes. And then we're going to get intense and we're going to go into it. If I am on a slap mill with that dog, the dog is, if I had to use a leash and slow down their movement, good. I said it. They saw it. It like happened. They felt it. It is association. And then you can cycle through windows.
Sure.
You can either enough them or easy them and you can see them. And then you make that sound and all of a sudden you hear, like obviously if you know how loud a slap mill can be, you can just hear and see the tone slowing down. If I'm bike riding with a dog or rollerblading with them, I'm going out, full out, going hard, and then I slow it down. So I make that sound, I say it, I make it so. If I say let's go, like let's go, I'm hoping you come. Otherwise, I'm getting it to happen. It's inevitable. So my obedience, my inevitable markers or windows should be almost a glimpse into the future for the dog of this is what's about to go down. So like you can do it or I'm going to get it. Yeah.
No, that makes complete sense. And something I used to do that sounds similar and how I can kind of equate this in my head is, I don't know if you're familiar with when Michael Ellis used to teach like engagement sessions, right? So an engagement session, in the way that we used to do them, is we would have a cue or a signal, right, to begin the engagement session. We actually used ready for that also, right? So I would say ready, and Vinny, my Malinois, he'd come up and engage, like ready, because he knew in a second the game was going to start. And then I'd say yes, right? Rewards or tug or whatever the hell it was we're going to do. And at the end of it, we would just say done, right? And as soon as we said done, tug went away, food went away, and the way that he used to teach them and the guy used to train with Ramondia Ring used to teach is you totally ignore the dog for 10 minutes, right, at that point, right? And it was wild after a week of just doing those engagement sessions when I got him. You'd say done, and he would go from obviously this jacked up Malinois state of mind to completely turned off, like completely disengaged, off, doing whatever. Arousal level came completely down at that point, and it was kind of that condition association. Now, again, where I've struggled with it, though, is then, you know, if we have these quote-unquote expectations, right? I was looking at, you're free and enough, right? Both of them, they're not opportunistic ones. Free is an opportunistic one. Enough is not an opportunistic one, right? Mm-hmm. Free would have technically no expectation at that moment, but enough would have an expectation. Is that correct?
Well, it depends on how you condition free.
Sure.
So like, there are some dogs that like, I'll put you in free, mm-hmm. and like, if I can on the walk, give you as much free as I possibly can, and you get your time to explore, you do that, you'll find it's the same thing as when we take dogs hiking. In the beginning, you release them and they're like, wow, and they go crazy. And then after a while, they're like, it's trees, bushes, and soil. Like, I'm just going to walk with you. Yeah. And like, they're still in free. A lot of times dogs will end up walking by your side, and it's like, bro, I can keep you in free, or I can say, let's go if you want. But if you're in it, it's like, you're free to do as what you want, and you're choosing that. Awesome. Mm-hmm. But if I have a dog that when I say free, like never releases, then I only want to say free when I know they might want to. So like, I'm going to say free because we're approaching this bush area that you might want to smell, or I say free right when you see a squirrel, mm-hmm. or I say free right when you have to go to the bathroom. So you can condition it. Whatever comes after that is going to be the association.
Sure.
So you could totally condition free that way.
Sure.
With enough, you got to be fair. Now, the cool thing about Michael Ellis is the man, by the way. You shouted him out, or you mentioned him before. One of just the coolest guys. I love Michael Ellis.
Yeah.
But you mentioned that Michael Ellis said like done. The thing that's really important to kind of point out there is that was after a session.
Yep.
So it was a hell of a lot easier. And don't get me wrong, like dogs can go for a while. Like I understand that, but like you gave the dog this like stuff to do. So saying done, it was like maybe the dog wanted to go a little bit more, but they got their fix. So it's easier. One, when you say done, like it's happening, right? But then two, the dog also got their fix. So it's like, yeah, I guess it's not that bad.
Sure.
I think the problem is that people say done or enough prior to that fulfillment during the conditioning phases or stages.
Yeah.
That now they have a dog, it just represents anxiety. Yeah. Because the dog's like, oh, I know what it means, and I didn't get this fix. And now we are responsible for conditioning that. Mm-hmm. So you want to be smart, like when you're saying enough. I'm not going to randomly like say enough when the dog sees a squirrel and expect to make it so.
100%.
Condition it.
Yeah. You know so that was their way of conditioning. So in the engagement session, just to be clear about that side of things, you actually, no different than when you're doing a training session, you don't want to end when the dog doesn't want anymore. The important thing with the engagement session was actually ending it while the dog was still in drive and wanted to go to teach that turn off then at that moment, right? So the thing I was getting at with it though is, so then we go to use that in practical application, right? So like you take that enough that you've conditioned in, however you've done so, right? How do we then, or can we either reward or discipline for an emotional state of mind if there is an expectation of one in that moment, to then back it up, right? Or like you were saying, say it and make it happen.
Yeah, well, with free, not so much, because it's an opportunistic window. So like free is like you're free to do what you want, so you're never really wrong.
Yeah, there's no expectation. Yes,
except for if you're doing something like inappropriate, like you can't run into the street. Like I have to put a limit on that. So free will always have limits based off of where you are, and like you got to help a dog to figure that out.
Sure,
just how you communicate. But if we're looking at enough, and we're trying to teach that, because that's what you were saying. How do you?
It's
how
more
do you,
so that one. Yeah.
Can you word that again? Because I want to string it.
So with enough, if there is, obviously free, there's no expectation aside from you still can't get into my trash can, right? You still can't get on my counter, et cetera, right? But with enough, there kind of is an expectation with that, right? There's an expectation of taking the arousal from a 10 down to a 5, right? So how do we, or can we then reinforce or discipline for not doing it?
Yeah. So I think it really depends on the dog. One, I'm going to try to ask for it when I'm teaching it in a way where I know that I can show the picture of what I want enough to represent.
Yep.
And really the answer is like, get enough by any means necessary, but you got to understand what that means. So if I can pop a dog on a leash and I think it's going to get them to settle, by all means, I'll do that. But a lot of times, really what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to help a dog to like woosah. So like I want to touch, I want to help them to relax a little, but then they're going to pick up the ball. Yeah. So I can totally like, just like nope, which means wrong, try again.
Yeah.
And if I say nope and they're like, Ron, try again, but I need help. Try again. What? I can like repeat it like enough. And if they drop that toy,
Yeah.
great. Or I can, nope, like enough, a little bit of a pop, and they finally spit it out, like, or they go for it again, like,
Sure.
nope, enough. So they're going to keep trying. I'm not going to deprive them the opportunity of like trying, but I'm going to end with like, this is what it is. Like, you can try. And I feel like sometimes people like look to interrupt the dog from like going after the ball or going after the ball. And it's like, I might catch you before you get it. But if you get it, it doesn't change what is happening. So I'll let you get the ball also.
Yeah.
Because enough is that. So, hey, no, enough. And if I have to like interrupt a little, and then after I interrupt, if I need to move you away from that ball, the ball's still there, but I help you like to settle, I will do whatever is necessary to help you see it. Yeah. So I think that's the biggest thing is just being able to influence a dog however is needed. But like, don't start popping the dog and correcting the dog and start turning enough into this sucky feeling. Yeah. It has to be this feeling of like relaxing and woosahing. And it's like, that's another thing. When I say ready, I come alive. Yeah. Like ready, I'm up. When I say enough, my ass better be like in sync and also like enough and like enough with my dog. So it's like, be what I want my dog to be the example is something that's really important.
Yeah. No, that makes total sense. It's and that's again that's the thing that I always kind of struggle with, because like I look at, so obviously my no marker, like I could tell my dogs no, right, and there's gonna be that drop of energy from like 11 to 5 because it's conditioned to have a negative association to it. But that's not the goal of that window. We don't want the dog necessarily to be fearful or subdued in that moment. We just want them to relax, and that's where the psychology of this stuff is really interesting.
Oh, totally. I mean, it's crazy because like dog training, you don't want to overcomplicate,
but you can,
like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But sometimes it's like, oh man. And like, if you really care, you start thinking about all these things. You're like, well, what about with this? But what about this situation? So I mean, you can't mess up too bad if you care about your dog.
No, 100%.
Like, and you're trying.
These are the interesting conversations that I love to have, right? So this is one of the things that I feel like Tyler and I used to get along a lot with, because he could you absolutely know he could nerd the fuck out over this kind of stuff, right? Yeah. And you've always had a very, just from, again, the couple conversations we've had before and the stuff you've posted, like you've always had a very intuitive kind of wanting to understand and like push the envelope with these kinds of things. And I feel like these are just important conversations for us to have as trainers, but then not allow it to get too in the way of how we're coaching our clients. Because, this whole conversation we're having right now, like we have a lot of young trainers that listen to the podcast, which is who it's primarily for, obviously. But this conversation, I would just confuse the ever living fuck out of your average owner. I feel like,
Yeah, man, you have to present things when they're ready for it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? A lot of owners are not ready for this because they haven't reached that level, which is kind of what I was saying before with some dogs. It's like you want to present things when they're ready for it. It's the same thing with my daughter. Like I've been using this example because it just holds true. She started getting into soccer, and in the beginning, like she wasn't sure how she felt about it. So that the primary goal was just make sure she's having fun. Mm-hmm. Right. And one of the things we're having fun is like literally just have fun. Don't be like, I can't be too strict on her, because if I'm too strict, I'm like, no, that's offsides. No, you can't touch it with your hands. No, you can't. Before you know it, you have a kid that goes, I don't want to play soccer. I'm not interested. Yeah. So make it fun. And once she actually wants to play it, then I can create more challenging rules that gets her to go, oh, no, don't do that. Okay, well, how do we get back to this game? Or how do we get back to doing this? Like, you know what I mean? So it's like when you have someone that cares about the sport that they're playing, they will take constructive criticism much better. Mm-hmm. Like if you care, if I'm a basketball coach and you love basketball and you want to make it big, and you're like, hey coach, like, what do you think I need to work on? And I go, well, Dave, you got lazy feet.
Yeah.
You're going to be like, oh, okay. You're going to get in the gym. You're going to work on your lazy feet. But if you tell someone that they have lazy feet that doesn't really care about the sport, they're going to go home, they're going to cry to mom, oh, he says they have lazy feet. And that's going to be the excuse for why, like, you're not good at basketball or whatever it is. So like, you have to be wise with when you challenge or when you give a dog or a kid or a human information or a client information, because if you do it too soon, it can actually shut them down.
Yeah.
100%.
What do you feel like do you feel like you're pretty in tune with, you know, the current climate of like new dog trainers or a lot of the different things that are being kind of preached out there as far as stuff going on in the modern dog world?
I mean, you try to be as much as possible, but it's I just try to stay out of the politics of dog training. It bugs me so much, or like the culty stuff in dog training. I want to keep learning, but I want to stay away from the culty stuff. So people will always have their opinions. People will always this way or that way, or this way only or that way only. And I'm on my Bruce Lee vibes, man. I'm gonna learn a little bit of this, learn a little bit of that, and keep it moving. And if you're mad at me because I'm not doing it this way entirely or that way, then that sucks to be you. You know what I mean? But it sounds more like a you problem than a me problem.
Yeah, I like that. Well, you know, obviously, I'm sure you have young trainers reaching out to you a lot for guidance. You've been in this industry for a long time. You've made a great name for yourself. What do you feel like some common issues or problems do you feel like that newer trainers are making right now? If you had to give some helpful criticism on things that you've noticed.
There's a couple of things. Caring what other people think, it's hard because like you don't want to shut off something that can make you better. You don't want to shut that down, but you don't want to limit yourself to fitting into the right way. Because the moment you do that is the moment that whatever makes you unique, kind of it shuts down or it kills your creativity, because now you're no longer you're just making content, or you're just training, or you're just doing something away so that you can get the approval of others. So it's like you kind of almost need to not care so much about the approval of others. That would be my advice. As long as you genuinely care, keep learning and don't worry about that. That's one thing that I would say. Some other advice that I would give: when you do take the time to learn, whether it's taking an online course or a seminar or whatever, don't jump so quickly to the next thing. Nerd out with that, dabble with that, experiment with that a little bit, because in my experience, you go to a seminar or you learn from someone, you watch something, whether you realize it or not, you try to be that person a little bit and you try to do it exactly that way. And it's not truly you, but it's okay. You figure it out. And then what happens is it doesn't work. So you go back to a little bit of the old way, and then like you take something with you, and now all of a sudden it's you again. So you got to experiment a little bit with what you learn before you move on to the next big thing, or the next big or next thing, whatever that is. Otherwise, what happens is you learn all these things and you never get to practice applying those new things. Knowing it in the head is not the same thing as like practicing it and having that hands-on, approach. Same thing with martial arts. I watch stuff on YouTube all the time and I go, no way. I know I can do that. I can check it out. And just because I watched it or just because I took one class doesn't mean I know it. So you gotta experiment. You gotta have time. You gotta practice. You gotta mess up. You gotta make mistakes. And if you're not failing, you're not trying. So don't be afraid to fail. I guess that would be my advice.
I think that last one is huge. Like I remember when I first started, there wasn't quite as much of the like overload of information as there is out there right now. And I used to, man, the first couple of years that I started training, it was like I would find like one person, I'd get really into their stuff, and I would try to emulate it from the standpoint of not trying to be like that person, but let me figure out why they're doing all of these things and make sure those techniques are things I have in my toolbox. And yeah, it was like a consistent process of every couple of months. It's like I would figure certain things out. I would go back to my original way and bring a few things with it and ultimately mold it, kind of into your own flavor of training. And I think a lot of people are doing a good job with the first part of that, which is pulling in the information and trying to emulate it, but then they fall too much in the rabbit hole of just trying to be that person without actually understanding why that person is doing some of those things, So you run into a roadblock, and it's like, because you don't know the why behind it, you can't like reverse engineer it and figure out where the hole is.
The other thing is, I agree with that, all of that. Don't shy away from the why, because I don't know, maybe that's just me from working with clients. I always want to have an answer.
Yeah, 100%, man.
It's like, well, man, if I don't know that, I need to figure that out. Yeah. Like you need to ask yourself, you're doing something, you don't know the why, and that's something that a client might ask. Like, go figure that shit out.
You don't want to be that idiot that's like, actually, I don't really know why we're doing that.
And like, it's okay to not know, but it's like, you should strive to like figure that out. You know what I mean? So yeah, definitely know your whys, because when the client asks, like you want to be able to break it down, and who knows, maybe you explain it, you articulate it in a way that's different. It doesn't have to be explained the same way, but just know the why.
Yeah.
It's important, you know?
Yeah, I used to do that a lot with some of our competitors in the area because we used to work with a decent amount of, people. I think all of us do, whatever. It's no ego brag or whatever. But it's like, yeah, you work with some people that have been to this trainer and stuff like that. And as we started seeing consistent ones come in, I was like, well, I want to figure out why this person is training the way that they're training. And I kind of pieced it together by seeing the dogs that were coming in, by watching the things they were posting. And by understanding their program, I was able to more clearly articulate to that person that called me and said, hey, well, why is your program going to be different and help me? Obviously, without bashing the other person, you're able to say, well, this is why our program is different and will solve that hole that you're experiencing right now. But I needed to understand the different ideas that were out there in the dog training world first to have that conversation with them. Or else you're just like, 100%. Well, maybe mine will work. Maybe mine is better. You don't want to be in that boat, obviously.
Yeah. Hey, listen, total like ADD brain right now, or kid's brain. Where are you shooting out of? Like, what are you filming out of right now?
From a camera, or what are you talking?
No, what room are you like in?
This is my attic of my house.
It's just cool. Like, it's cool lighting and everything. And
yeah. We got like this huge like attic room up here that is just like our office / podcast studio. So yeah, it's pretty sweet.
I love it. That's awesome.
Hell yeah.
I was curious. I was like, I wonder where he is right now. But I
we just got a little neon sign back there. So that's what the glow is coming from. We got a little light on us. So it's actually nice that we're filming at night because usually we have like 2 windows right here that shine a little glare in and throw all the lights off. So
that's everything perfect. Off.
Yeah. Okay. So last big kind of question / topic. So like, obviously you talked about the things that you're interested in right now from the standpoint of like the emotional aspect of the dog training and helping the dog feel better about certain things and stuff. Where do you find yourself really getting those bursts of kind of getting out of your rut of things? Because dog training, regardless of what way you look at it, sometimes it can be so mundane with stuff, right? You're going through the same motions and everything. Like, where do you find yourself searching for more information then at that point? Do you feel like you kind of get in a rhythm and then you notice some sort of little ADD problem that's not really a problem, but it's like, hey, I'd like to improve on that, and you start seeking that knowledge, or how does it kind of come to you with that? Especially after you've been doing it for a while now.
Sometimes you just have to go, like if something's coming up, whether it's a seminar, like I almost need to get away from what it is that I do.
Yeah.
Like I work with pet dogs. So it's like, you know what? I need to dabble more with just seeing what sport dog trainers are doing. I need to dabble more with seeing what like trick dog trainers or whatever you want to call them, or agility trainers. I just need to see people doing stuff out of the context of like what I'm doing, and then just pull parallels and similarities, because that's kind of how my brain works. I'm very caveman in like layman's terms. I was like, oh, no, that's sort of just like this. That's sort of just like that. So it's like finding similarities in the things that are different. I think is refreshing for my brain, and that's been my thing lately.
Yeah. I think I was saying I love being able to disconnect from, like, we have the luxury also as like I feel like the business owners where we're jam packed with shit all the time, and it's like there's never a break with it, but we can really step away from certain aspects sometimes to give ourselves like a fresh brain coming back into it. If I go on a vacation or something, like I find myself consistently 100% of the time coming back with like fresh new ideas that I drew from literally wherever the fuck, like usually not even something dog training related. Like I saw some person having an interaction in a certain way, right? Or some owner walking their dog down the street in some new place or something like that. I feel like I noticed.
It's a matter of like writing it down so you can remember it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%.
So I come up with these awesome ideas and then I forget. I'm like, oh, I'll remember that. Yeah. And then I get home and I'm like, what? Like I'm so upset that my brain can't think the way I thought. It's like, come on, like that was so good.
Yeah.
Dude.
I used to use a long time ago, I used to use like voice notes, right? And that would help because like, even if I typed it out in like Evernote or something like that, I would go back and read it then like 2 weeks later and be like, what the fuck was I talking about right there? Where like if I said it out loud into my phone and then was able to hear myself and like the inflection of my voice and something, it would trigger that memory much more easily. But I find myself in that same boat all the time where I'll say, oh, I'll write it down in 20 minutes or I'll do that voice note in 20 minutes and totally forget.
That's good. Yeah, I need to think about doing that actually, because that happens to me too. I'll read a note And it's like, if I'm not in the mode, or even sometimes video that I watch, like I'm going to make a good video out of this and I don't get to it right away.
Yeah.
And I come back to it later and it's just, there's no motivation. I'm not inspired in any way. I'm like, what was I planning on doing with this? Like, I don't want to do anything with this, you know?
Do you have video people do you have like a media team, quote unquote, or no?
I did. I'm going to start this again. It's definitely like 21 minutes or something like that.
It's exactly what ours was. And I'll tell you, I mean, there may be a setting in it, but with ours, if the camera is set like that, from everything I read, it's pretty much set like that. So I'm
gonna find a hack.
There.
Either that, or I have to find a way to just splurge for like a newer camera. And the GH5 for Lumix Panasonic is no longer like new, so I'm sure I can find like a cheaper one of those, and then just so I can make that work. What were we just talking about?
Media team.
Oh, media team. Yeah. I had a guy who was great at the time, that he was like at the top of his game. He was like here.
Yeah.
He was able to film. He was able to edit. He was able to kind of learn the dog stuff, and it really, really worked. But it just, unfortunately, he had a lot of things going on, and then he ended up moving away. So it was like, if you're away, at least I can film it and you can edit it, but it ended up not being the same. So right now I'm doing everything on my own.
Yeah. That's, I mean, I
have considered a dog that I post good content on, and then I have Instagram subscriber platform right now that it's really cool because I'm personalizing videos for people that are subscribers. Hey, I want to see this. Can you talk about that? And it's a nice way to, I guess, get access to me in ways that maybe you're not able to otherwise. So it's like, hey, you can get access to me for like $4.99 a month. And now I can say, hey, listen, man, like if you want help with your dog, you can search through my Instagram, my YouTube, or whatever for free.
Yeah.
You can pay $4.99 like a month, which is like super cheap.
Yeah.
You can do virtual sessions. You know, you can have like private, in person, or board and train. So we have things that go up to like $10,000 all the way down to like free. So there's no excuse. We can help you with your dog, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Do you struggle with, or do you worry that, because a lot of your content right now seems like it's coming out on like subscription based platforms, at least a lot of the like the juicy content, you know, the really like you're going to get some real serious knowledge out of this. Do you worry that has or is going to cap off a lot of future growth from like an internet standpoint?
It does. You got to find the balance and know how to promote like something for subscribers. I got to do a better job at that. So it's like you're giving them a little bit of juice, or you're unlocking something. You're doing, hey, guys, this is a video that I would like normally post on here, but here you go. So you're giving them like little tastes, and you want the non-subscription platform to be something that is still helpful.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like we live in a world where a day and age where like online content is like people's business, like virtual and stuff, and what we're doing. It's like, that's the way of the game. So you don't want to give away everything for free, where it's how you make your living. So it's really finding that balance. I think I just need to do a better job of promoting and having little promos that have people going, oh my God, that was so good. Like, I want to watch more of that. I want to watch the full version of that. And it's available. $4.99. Yeah. Even if you cancel after 1 month, I will I want to hear what his answer was, or I want to see what that dog ended up doing, because I just saw the before and I saw the after, and just kind of do it that way. So you got to make it juicy, and you got to show people that it's worth doing it. And it's hard sometimes, you know?
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. So we have a small media team that puts together content. We do like a vlog series, like basically every other day. She'll film like our whole day of lessons and make a 45-50 minute video out of it. And I find that we find ourselves in a rut sometimes of like, we'll go a couple weeks where all the content we put out on like Instagram or TikTok or whatever it may be is like all talking stuff, you know? It's kind of like, hey, here's a 60-second clip of me explaining to a client how to reward their dog better, or do this or do that, which is all good. But, you know, I look at, you know, the stuff that got all of us popular in the first place, right? And again, you more than me and stuff, but like a lot of it was, you know, you and Tyler and those guys, you were showing some of the, like, look how good this fucking training is. You know what I mean? And it's so hard. And we could blame our boy Gary V for it all we want, because he's the one who started the film your vlog and then make the micro content out of it, which has been phenomenal. It's been a great success. But sometimes I feel like I'm getting away from the bread and butter of content, which is just, look at these great dogs that we're actually training right now, And
I think you got to mix it up.
Yeah.
I think that's really what it is. And it's only trial and error, and it's tweaking, and then the algorithm of something is changing. So you gotta you gotta figure out how to make it work with the algorithm and what people want to see. That's going to generate interest. That's going to allow them to listen to this, and then all of a sudden be interested in your subscriber platform. But I remember during COVID, I didn't really have like a lot of content, so all I was doing Zoom calls up the wazoo, and I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna film it, and then we're gonna show it. And then it was like, in the beginning it was awesome. And then it
gets redundant. Yeah.
Wow. It's like, all right. Like, all this guy's doing is talking. Like, do you even know how to train a dog? And it's like, look at my old videos from before. It's all right, we got to get back to like showing some of this stuff. So then that way, when you are talking, people want to listen to it because they've seen what you've been able to do with the dog. Yeah. So you got to mix it up, man.
Yeah. The personal dog stuff too is another one that I feel like is we have heavily untapped, right? Like, I used to do all of this like really flashy, precise training that I don't do with my client dogs really, right? With my personal dogs. And that was a lot of also people would see, and it's like, wow, look at this Malinois doing all this stuff, or this pit bull doing freaking hurdles and shit, And now they're all just freaking retired and stay at home and do nothing all day. And it's like, I'm like heavily missing that opportunity as well right now, I feel like. And that's another one we've been talking about, man, like I got to start doing something like once a week, like a really freaking cool training session I film with them or some shit like that.
Time for a puppy, man.
Well, we actually just got... We got a puppy like about a year ago now, and I thought, so I got him. He was like a rescue. We kind of got suckered into him by one of our clients, and I thought he was gonna be like this like 80-pound like Labradoodle, right? Like he was gonna be like our cool new. We joked he was gonna be like the LL Bean dog, right? Just for whatever reason, like cool fucking mountain dog that does a bunch of cool tricks and stuff. And he's at like a year and a couple months at this point. He's like capped out at, I think he just hit 31 pounds the other day. So he's just a fucking little guy.
He's a little runt.
Yeah, so like I could do some cool shit with him and everything, but he's also a mega weenie, man. This dog, and it's funny, we get into back to some of the conversations we were having earlier about, caring about emotional state of dog and this and that, and all of that is so freaking important. Right? It's also important. But sometimes we care so much about, having these happy, crazy, energetic dogs and this and that without realizing just the genetics of the dog that you have, man. Like this dude, when we got him, was terrified of literally absolutely everything under the sun, would just shut down and shake and be fearful of everything. He's great. He's like a normal dog now, right? But like he's not going to be like, so pumped to work like some of my other dogs are all the time.
Yeah. It's important to know the dog that you have in front of you, what they need and how to make them the best versions of themselves.
That's a great way to put it.
Know who themselves are, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like their quirks, man. Like my other dog, my Pitty, like she'll get like fearful of miscellaneous random things, but not in like a problematic way or debilitating or anything, but like, she'll get like a little sketched out by something, and like it's almost like funny, her response to it. And it's like, we can condition away those things and we could help improve on those things, and we've done so, right? But it's like where she's at right now, it's not hurting her, it's not hurting anybody else. And we understand her limits with certain things. I think that's an important thing that a lot of owners need to realize, and we've tried to showcase through me just talking to clients and talking about it on the podcast and stuff, is that all our dogs are like, they all have their quirks. It's not like because we know how to counter condition something or care about emotional state of mind or all these types of things that we're making them all these perfect robots. It's like we work with the dog we have, and you hit it right on the head. I think that's a great way to end it with help them be the best version of themselves.
That's it. That's what it is. Yeah, and you just got to know who they actually are, and it's like, all right, this is who you are. Well, then let's get you to be a better version. That's it. You know what I mean? And don't try to compare you to this dog or that dog. It's just not. It's not fair. Yeah. I wouldn't be fair to compare my son to my daughter or my daughter to my son. It's like this is who you are. So it's like, know who they are and understand that and embrace it.
Yeah. I love that. Well, listen, man. I really appreciate you coming on and doing this late with us. Hopefully you're enjoying your Modelo over there.
I'm glad we got to make this work. And again, I apologize, man. It was just a little bit hectic. I I had a lot going on.
It's no sweat at all, man. Glad to make it happen. We'll have to talk again. So you could go ahead and, I know you're, like I said, putting a lot of your stuff out on Consider the Dog. I don't know if you have any new courses you want to promote or places you want people to go to or anything.
I have a good rehabilitating aggression using a pool series that came out on Consider the Dog not too long ago. It's not so much the pool that is what the video is about. It's really the approach and the stages of when we were rewarding, how we were rewarding, and the hurdles and how we overcame initial hurdles before moving into other things. And I think that's a cool series. I have some stuff that I need to work on right now. I have a possessive resource guarding course that I want to put out on there. I have all the content. I just gotta get to editing, and then I have something else in the works that I want to put together, which is like a 2.0 to my communication course, and just adds all the stuff that I'm doing now. But that's going to be a little bit of a ways away. I'm just starting to film for it now.
Yeah, well, that's awesome.
But other than that, it's Instagram subscribers and Consider the Dog. That's pretty much where I'm at right now.
Hell yeah! All right, man. Well, we appreciate it. Mm-hmm. Take care of yourself, and we'll talk soon.
I appreciate you guys. Thanks, man. Nice meeting you, brother.
Yep. See you.
Take it easy.